So on this front, Bud Elliott from the Cover 3 podcast tweets that the Big 12 is not going to win a national championship in our lifetimes unless there's some drastic change to the structure of the sport. Josh Pate started talking about that, and he made that point on his show. He, as you might guess, agreed with Bud Elliott. And once again, I would agree with the general point and premise. But somebody in the comments, I did like this comment if you're looking for a little bit more Big 12 hope. The comment was this. It just said the Big 12 can do it the same way Clemson got the ACC titles. If one Big 12 team soars ahead and dominates everyone year in, year out, that team will have a shot at titles. So there's your hope. Can a team do that? Can a team really take the bull by the horns and start to make the playoff every year, win the league? Doesn't have to be winning the league if you're going to have 2 automatic playoff spots, which it looks like is where we are headed. But if somebody can do that, then, hey, they could build a brand. This is a brand building opportunity. Something to keep in mind. I know I've said it to you guys a couple of times, but first time I talked about it was going into this season when we were thinking like, hey, at best, you're most likely going to just be getting 1 playoff bid every single year. Now we're looking at opening that up to 2. If you're trying to brand build, if you're one of these schools that feels like you've got the resources to compete year in and year out, if you consistently make the playoff and you find a way to win a couple games there over the course of 4 or 5 years, that's going to do wonders for your brand. And it opens up more of a brand building opportunity than what you had in the 4-team playoff era because it was just so hard to get there. Like you were not going to get there multiple times. A lot of the casuals watch the playoff. They're going to watch the playoff. So if you're a team that is consistently there and there are more spots open now to the Big 12, like that's advantageous. That gives you something that you didn't have before if we're talking about how it equates to currency in the realignment game and trying to get yourself invited into whatever the upper crust is going to be in 2030, 2031, which we don't know. We don't know exactly what that will look like. And maybe it's all just a fool's errand anyway, but that gives you a chance. It gives you a chance. So there are a couple of questions here. If we're going to use the Clemson example, which I do really like, because I'm going to outline to you Clemson's history before Dabo Swinney here in just a moment. It is not very different from a lot of Big 12 schools. But the 2 questions would be, 1, can one Big 12 team actually win consistently enough in the Big 12 to do this in a league that is filled with so much parity where the number 16 team in the preseason poll just won the league last year? And the downside of this discussion to me is it seems kind of doubtful. Now, the 2 playoff spots make a big difference. If it were just 1 and you're taking 1 team in all likelihood to the playoff every single year, and it's a 12-team playoff like that, it gets really hard for me to say, I think somebody will consistently be able to do that. I mean, we would have thought Utah was going to be the squad to do that, and Utah finished damn near at the bottom of the Big 12 last year after being picked to win it. And again, Arizona State, picked 16th, won the thing. So that's the whole hallmark of this league, right? It's crazy exciting. It's up and down week to week because you don't know who's going to win games, man. You don't know who's going to win games, and everybody can look very silly, and I'd imagine that is going to continue. I don't think that was just a one-year thing. And part of it is you can read the tea leaves on that. Like all these schools are very similarly resourced. There are not schools that have massive historical advantages, facility advantages, brand advantages. We can definitely talk about the financial advantages that like a BYU or a Texas Tech probably have over most of the teams in the rest of the league. But in general, you've got teams that are pretty close together in terms of resources and what they're doing. So that's going to increase this parity a lot. So you've got to win consistently and get one of those 2 playoff spots almost every year, because keep in mind, we're talking about like 6 years next year. And then the new playoff contract, we're talking about like 6 years for you to get this done. So can somebody get to the playoff 4 of 6 years minimum is probably where that conversation starts. If you want to build a brand anywhere near like what Clemson eventually put together. So that is some good. You'll have more opportunity to do it. Now, what are we talking about doing if you're going to become the new Clemson, right? So Clemson I mean, stop me if this resume sounds kind of familiar. Had one national title before Dabo showed up, one in school history. It occurred in the 80s, 1981. And they had a grand total of 3 11-plus win seasons before Dabo showed up. Those were in 1981, 1978, and 1948. Okay, so not a lot of this like super high-level success at Clemson before Dabo showed up. And in the years before he got there, they were a solid program, but not elite. They won 8, 8, 9, and 7 games in the 4 years before Dabo showed up to take over that program. So, I mean, national champion in the 80s, solid football history, but not spectacular. Who does that sound like? That sounds an awful lot like the resume of BYU right now, right? I mean, Colorado's got a national championship in the early 90s. They have been very good at points in their football history, but never on any kind of an elite level. You know, Texas Tech, if we're talking, hey, the program was winning 8, 8, 9, and 7 before took a real step up here and jumped up and built the Clemson brand. I mean, Texas Tech, that's basically what Texas Tech has been. 8, 8, 7. That's where Joey McGuire has had it. Now you're looking to take the next step and start to do that consistently. So then what did Dabo do after that? Well, he got it rolling by year 3. First 2 years, a little bit rocky, but by year 3, he wins 10-plus games. He wins 10-plus games for 12 straight years, which is insane. Goes to 5 playoffs, 2 national championships. Now, understand with this discussion, I'm not talking about a Big 12 school realistically in the next 6 years or whatever, winning a national championship or winning 2 national titles. We're talking about getting to the playoffs. That 5 playoff number might be a little more apropos here. Can you do 4? Can you do 4 of 6? And the door will be much more wide open for you to be doing that than Dabo getting to a 4-team playoff in the era that we are talking about, which 4 of those 5 playoff appearances came from that. Now, in order to make that happen, I mean, Dabo got generational talent at quarterback, back-to-back QBs like that, and Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence that certainly played a huge role in that 6-year stretch where they were just absolutely at the very top of the sport. Alabama, Clemson, 1-2 at the very top of the sport. And I don't think if you look around, you know, I used the example of a Texas Tech or a BYU. I don't think if you look around, you're going to confuse Baron Morton or Jake Retzloff with generational quarterback talent. Okay, but Clemson did start to get everything on that level with Taj Boyd, still a very good college quarterback, but definitely not generational talent college quarterback. So could somebody replicate a Taj Boyd? Yeah, probably so. Probably so. Can you do it in 5 or 6 years? There's no time to waste here, man. You better start now. This better be a team or a program that makes the playoff next year. Or very much so in 2026, if that's going to be the first year that opens up 2 auto bids for the Big 12. You better be there by then. Because by year 5 for Dabo, if we're talking about, again, 5-year stretch here, year 5 for Dabo, he got up to number 3 in the country, had 3 straight 10-plus win seasons, couple 11-win seasons. So you'd have to do it pretty fast and string together seasons that start to look like that. So there's good and bad here. That's obviously a lofty bar, but you have more of a brand-building opportunity than Dabo had because of more access to the playoff. Bad would be Dabo had generational talent at quarterback. Going to be tough to find. Good would be he still had a lot of success with a Taj Boyd caliber quarterback. You can probably do that. That's something you could probably replicate. Another good, I don't think it takes, if we're talking about building your stock for not only being a team that could win the national championship down the road, but also in a realignment currency sense, be a school that could ensure that you're going to be there for the next evolution of what happens in the 2030s. I don't think that being in like a huge media market is going to really matter a whole lot. Might help out TCU a bit if it ever came down to that for the Big Ten, but that we're talking about like some kind of tiebreaker if TCU is the team that pulls off 4 in 6 years, you know, and is able to put themselves in that sort of position. So it doesn't hurt, but I don't think it's any sort of necessity. What it's about now is your brand and how much it matters in college football. So if you're a team that gets to the playoff 4 of 6 years and you are winning games, that can matter to college football enough to perhaps put you on the same sort of level, at least maybe a diet Clemson? Maybe I should have started with that. Can you become a diet Clemson in all of this?